Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up,
we've got to make sure that every outsider comes here with respect of us who are inside the organisation.
Winston Peters blames outsiders for PIF tensions. Also, Tonga's king may look to have more control over its diplomacy. And
we're often our own worst enemy, and that's just how we've been.
Tina makes top 5 successful films of all time in New Zealand. The 54th Pacific Islands Forum Leaders Meeting in Honiara is weeks away. Solomon Islands Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele has proposed that PIF leaders defer the annual Dialogue Partner meeting, which includes the US and China, to next year's summit in Palau. New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters is blaming nations that are not part of the Pacific Islands Forum for causing disagreements between members.
Outsiders are now telling us who we can have as guests. That's not the Pacific way. And if you dissect every Pacific Islands population, they will not like that.
The Pacific Islands Forum split in 2021 following a squabble over who should become chair of the Pacific Islands Forum. Mr. Peters says this time division is being caused by external players.
We hardly got that sorted out. Now we've got outsiders causing the split. And that's worse. So we've got to make sure that every outsider comes here with respect of us who are inside the organisation.
Te Wila Fuatai is in Suva for the Pacific Islands Forum Foreign Ministers meeting. Talofa lava Te Wila. First of all, do we know if a decision has been made on the proposal to defer the Dialogue Partners meeting to next year?
Hola, Susana. No. Well, I should say that you've actually caught me, and the meeting between foreign ministers and other representatives is actually still ongoing. So we're running behind schedule. So they haven't put out a final sort of recommendations or final statement about today's meeting yet at the point that we're talking. So we don't actually know whether or not any decision has been made around partners being allowed to attend next month's Leaders Summit in Honiara.
All right, but what we do know is that you spoke to Marshallese representative Gerard Zakios. What did he have to say?
Yes, I did. And I might actually just go back. I think I should mention that probably for people that are familiar with how the Pacific Islands Forum operates, or I suppose it's all around consensus building, and I think the fact that we're running late today, or that the meeting is running late, is probably indicative of how difficult it is to come to a consensus for a body that is so diverse. Like, it's got a range of members from all over the region, and we're talking sort of metropolitan nations like Australia and New Zealand to places like Kiribati and Palau. So it's really hard to sit everyone in the same place and get them to all come together and make a decision. Now, yes, to addressing your question, I did have a conversation with Gerard Zakios. I just come towards the end of the lunch break, actually, and he confirmed that a final Ocean of Peace declaration had been tabled at the forum. Now, this Ocean of Peace is basically, it was an initiative that was proposed last year by Fiji Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka, and it's basically a strategy for the region to peacefully, as the name suggests, counter external influence and competition. Now, the ins and outs of what that really means, and I suppose how it's executed, is probably why it's taken a while to actually get an agreed version of what that means for forum members. And so that's been tabled, and what he told me was they're basically waiting to see what the next steps are from there. Probably for people listening, it's also important to note that media aren't actually allowed into the forum sessions, so they're closed door sessions essentially. So we don't actually get to hear what they're discussing, and perhaps this particular initiative, what might the holdups be, who is disagreeing on what, and that kind of thing. All the stuff that you want to know to understand what's actually happening.
Who are the outsiders that New Zealand's Foreign Minister Winston Peters is referring to?
Good question. So I think you're referring, of course, to the media stand-up that the New Zealand media contingent had with Winston Peters right at the beginning of the day before the foreign ministers meeting began, where he basically said that there is outsiders who are influencing decisions within the region. It was, classic Winston Peters fashion. That stand-up was in and out, and we didn't actually get a chance to ask him around who these actual outsiders are. what the plan is that we're going to speak to him again at the end of the day and hopefully clarify some of those things. But of course we know, as people that live in the region, that there's a lot of contention around the likes of, the US, China, other countries, bigger countries influencing smaller nations or nations in the Pacific. Well, Winston Peters didn't say specifically who that was. I also managed to grab Papua New Guinea Foreign Minister Justin Tichenko this afternoon, and he was quite specific. I put that question to him around outsiders because he used similar language. He actually said his words were, "We've got the United States and China and everybody else playing their power games amongst themselves, which then affect all of us going forward." So those are two big superpowers that Justin Tichenko referred to.
The King of Tonga, Dupo VI, is being asked not to sign a legislation that would end parliamentary control of two key ministries. Last week, under an urgent vote, the Tonga legislature voted for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be remade as His Majesty's Diplomatic Services and to be run outside of Parliament under the auspices of Crown Prince Dupo Toa Ulukalala. To some in Tonga, this is a reversal of democratic reforms introduced in 2010. Don Wiseman spoke with our Tonga correspondent, Kalafi Moala.
Basically, it's still a Ministry of Foreign Affairs being moved from a government service under the cabinet to become a service under the king, directly under the king and his Privy Council. That's the major change that has taken place. In other words, all diplomatic services, all the foreign type of ministry, including immigration, issuance of passports, all of that have moved from the cabinet or the Prime Minister's office to become a part of the King's responsibility in the palace. And that's a huge one.
And why? We don't know why, do we?
Well, from the previous government, you can remember, there was pressure from the King expressing dissatisfaction on the Minister of Defense and Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is why Prime Minister then Sovaleni resigned from holding those portfolios. And so there was an expression from the King of dissatisfaction. Now with this government, what they have done has passed law in Parliament that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Defense will move over under the King's jurisdiction.
And they did that right at the end of the parliamentary term, didn't
Yes.
they? Was there any opposition within Parliament?
Well, that was the thing that surprised the public, because the law was brought in as an emergency law or urgent. And so it was passed without debate, in fact. And no opposition, no debate was held. It was just passed. And then a press release came out to the public that here is a law. And those of us outside Parliament were just absolutely surprised, because what it looked like is just a beginning of a reverse of the reform that took place in 2010. In other words, that the Parliament would choose the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister elects his ministers and all the government services. But here, we've got one of those services being handed back to the King. And who can tell what other services will in future be handed back to the King? So it's a kind of a reverse of what happened with the reform of 2010.
In terms of the Ministry of Defence, what's happening?
Well, the Ministry of Defense, of course, have always been under the King's jurisdiction, and we do have a constitution clause that says the King can't declare war without Parliament's consent. So the King had always had a say with the Ministry of Defense, but the minister was an appointment of cabinet. In this case, it would be direct appointment of the King as well as the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
In terms of what's happened in foreign affairs, could the general public expect any difference in the nature of the services provided?
The services can remain the same. There are some people that are saying that this is probably the Palace Office's response to a lot of accusations about the misuse of funds. Much of those funding comes from overseas in terms of foreign aid. And now with the Foreign Affairs and Defense moving to the Palace Office, that means that they will be managing all of the diplomatic relations and aid or any assistance that come from overseas. It will be directly under the King's supervision.
What about funding? Where's that going to come from? Presumably Parliament's not going to be voting for a budget for the diplomatic service.
Definitely, one of the complaints is that it will be coming as part of the budget. There's, of course, the royal budget, which comes from the budget, the king's wages and all of that. But this, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of course, it will come in from the budget, the national budget, as part of our services. It's just it will be supervised by the king instead of the prime minister.
It's a remarkable situation, isn't it? There's not going to be a peaceful coexistence, is there?
Definitely not, because as we speak today, a public petition is being handed over to the palace office in opposition of this move. The petition calls for the king to please don't sign into law the legislation that will come out of Parliament. So that's the petition that's going into the palace office this morning. But I think what a lot of people are afraid of is just it seems to be a regression or a reverse of what happened in the pathway to democracy that happened in 2010. And even though we've had some struggles with that, but this seems to be a direct act of reversing that.
Who's behind the petition? Who's leading that?
The petition is really brought in by the Democrats, actually, the followers of Akilisi Pohiva from the Kelea. But it's gathering a bit of support from the public. The interesting thing is some of those in Parliament were strong supporters of the 2010 reform. But when this legislation came in, they all voted for it. So there's a lot of very strange things happening in this country now.
New Zealand-based Samoan director Miki Mangasiwa's debut feature film, Tina, has perped iconic Whale Rider at the box office to become the fifth most successful Kiwi film. Tina, which was released earlier this year across more than 100 locations in Aotearoa and the Pacific, also claimed the third highest opening week of all time for a local film. I caught up with Miki Mangasiwa and began by asking him if he ever anticipated Tina's success at the box office.
Yeah, I never expected it to come this far. We knew we had a good movie on our hands. We're just so happy that people have wanted to see it, and we just keep knocking off our little goals as we've gone. And now to get to this point, this was sort of the last one. This was the final goal that we were going for when we sort of started getting close. And so now that we've reached it, we can just certainly I can feel like I'm really satisfied now that the work has proven itself and people have enjoyed to see it, and so now just really happy now with the way that it's gone. Definitely exceeded expectations massively.
Absolutely. What's the reaction been like from the rest of the cast?
Oh, they've pretty much all reached out in different ways. Just so happy for the team and for us. Bueller and I are in touch often, so it was great. He sort of reached out first, and I don't know, Bueller and I have been on this journey right from the beginning, and we've been to so many places to deliver the film to people that when we hit the milestone, he and I had a really special, intimate, emotional moment, when he called to say congratulations. So that was a really special moment for both of us to reach that, and just knowing how hard we've worked to get there made it all the more special and made it really emotional for both of us. And then, Bells was pressing me the whole time going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So it was nice to enjoy that with her as well. And much the same with everybody else who's reached out. Just super proud that we got there, because we do feel like it's a family film. It's a family project. We're all in it together.
And it's definitely a win for Pacifica people. But what do you think gave this film its mass appeal?
Well, it's a number of things. We tried to put in all of the things that we like to see in movies ourselves, and being a Pacific person myself, I just wanted to put in all the things that I like, and they just happen to be the things that I feel like resonate with not only Pacific Islanders, but everybody else. You know, there's music in there, there's comedy there, there's emotion there, there's family, there's our mothers, there's sacrifice. And it's a lot of the filmic techniques I use are just, you know, if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you know all of those film techniques well. So it feels like familiar territory, a familiar story. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of things in there that people can find something to connect with. Pacifica people can find something to connect with. You know, just from the music. I hadn't seen Pacific music, certainly Samoan music, used very often. And it's such strong, powerful music. And so I just put it right through the whole film, knowing that all Samoans would love that music. So, yeah, there's lots of things in there that I feel like people can connect to.
Yeah, speaking of connection, we had this conversation the last time that we spoke, and I'm just wondering, Mickey, like, how would you describe the current film and TV landscape now for Pacifica creatives, now that we've seen the success of Tina and other projects come out, such as Jason Momoa's Chief of War series?
Yes. I'd describe it as the beginning.
The beginning, yeah.
And even though we have had wonderful films previously, from Sione's Wedding to The Orator and many others, actually, all of Stallone's work, it's been few and far between. And so I feel like now, or this moment feels really exciting for Pacific film and television. Like you say, with these films coming out now, I myself have spoken to lots of creatives now who, I don't know, they have a sense of enthusiasm and hope about their work. And there's been lots of talk about things that different creatives are up to. I've spoken to lots of people who are like, I really want to do this. I'm doing this. I'm working on this. I'm working on this. And all Pacific material, you know. And we weren't having those conversations before. They would always be in isolation. Everybody would be working on their own things. No one was really sure about whether it would get off or not, get off the ground, that is. And now I feel like everybody's super excited to be working on their content, working on their stories, and it just feels like an exciting time. So I hope it's the start of something really big to come. I hope it's a lot of different emerging talent coming through. I hope it's old established talent getting back to their stories and telling their stories again. And I just hope that financiers see the value in these stories.
Cool. Just coming back to the reaction that Tina has received, especially in terms of its success. At the end of the film, we see the dedication card to your brother Boa. Well, what do you think he'd say if he was to see your hard work pay off with this film?
Oh, he would say, why am I not in it? He was... I think he would be super proud. You know, he reminds me very much of Beulah, and, you know, those two are very close. And so many moments and instances where I've been with Beulah and he's reacted in different ways, I just feel like that's how Poos would have reacted to a lot of the stuff. He would have been very proud. He would have been at the forefront of it, pushing the film. He would have been getting everybody involved. He would have been a massive advocate for it. You know, he was a massive family guy. He was a loving and caring supporter. He was in love with the arts and what it is to be creative. So he would have been really proud of us, I think.
Oh, lovely. That's the end of our talanoa, Miki, but is there anything that you'd like to share? Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I really love that thing that you said about what's going on at the moment with Pacific creators and stories. I do feel like it's an exciting time. I would like to encourage all of those people working on their projects to keep going. But above all, I think we should be supporting each other. You know, we're often our own worst enemy, you know, and that's just how we've been. But I hope now we can get behind each other and we can support each other in our stories. I certainly am starting to get little collective groups of creatives where we're working on our stories and we're trying to support each other because, man, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell these stories, and I don't think it's useful to be knocking each other down. And we certainly had our challenges with that in making this film. And if we hadn't have made this film, we wouldn't have had all of this massive success that we've had, and it wouldn't be something that we could call our own. You know what I mean? So instead of knocking each other down, I would just encourage everybody to have each other's backs and support each other.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā soifua.